So imagine this. You go to pull money out of your savings account. You know, the one place your money is supposed to be totally 100% safe. And it's just gone. And it's not
Huh.
just you. It's thousands of other people, all at once, their accounts totally frozen. This isn't some bad dream. It's the shocking reality for a ton of customers who use these popular new fintech apps. I mean, you've got people like Colin. He'd carefully, painstakingly saved up over $53,000. He logs in one day, and what does he see? A balance of zero. Just gone. His entire life savings vanished. Then there's Jamal. His wife had 55 grand saved up. And you know what she got back? $100. $100. It's just a devastating blow, and it makes absolutely no sense. And for Max, wow, he gets back $17. 17 out of $21,000. He said it wasn't just losing the money. It felt like a straight-up insult. So the big question is, how on earth does something like this even happen? Well, it happens because at the very center of this whole financial nightmare, there's this massive black hole. We're talking about, according to the Wall Street Journal, up to $96 million of customer money that is just unaccounted for, missing. All right, let's really get into this. To figure this out, we're going to look at the people who got hurt, unravel this fintech shell game that made it all possible, dig into the $96 million mystery, check out the blame game that's going on, see who was asleep at the wheel, and finally, ask if there's any hope for justice. Because really, at its heart, this whole thing is a story about thousands of just regular people. You know, people saving for a house, for an emergency, for their retirement. They put their trust in a system that was supposed to protect them. And that system just completely, utterly failed. So how did this all go so wrong? Well, these folks weren't using a normal old-school bank. Instead, their money was being passed through this really complex chain of different companies. It created this fragile house of cards that honestly was just waiting for a breeze to knock it over. Okay, so here's how it worked. You'd put your money into one of these slick new apps, maybe something like Yada or Juno, but the app itself, it didn't actually hold your money. Nope, it used this middleman company called Synapse to handle all the banking stuff. And then Synapse partnered with a real, actual, FDIC-insured bank called Evolve Bank and Trust to hold the cash. Now, you might be thinking, wait, why would anyone feel safe with this setup? And the answer is one thing: FDIC insurance. These apps advertised it everywhere. They promised your money was protected, up to $250 grand by the US government. That's the gold standard, right? Well, here is the absolutely crucial, devastating catch. The FDIC protects you if the bank fails. But in this case, the bank, Evolve, it didn't fail. It was the middleman, Synapse, that went bankrupt. And that one little detail created this catastrophic loophole that meant the main safety net, it was just gone. It left all these customers completely and totally exposed. And that right there leads us to the central mystery of this whole mess. Because if the bank didn't fail, then in theory, everyone's money should still be sitting there, safe and sound at Evolve. But it's not. So if the money isn't just lost, then where is it? That is the $96 million question. And it's left everyone, customers, lawyers, even the bankruptcy trustees, completely stumped. I mean, somebody has to have it, right? So the problem really boils down to this: a total deadlock over the accounting books. You've got Synapse's records, their ledger, saying customers have X amount of money. But then you look at Evolve Bank's records, and they show this huge shortfall. Evolve's story is, hey, we were just following Synapse's instructions to send money to other banks. But, and this is really interesting, those other banks, their numbers seem to line up with Synapse's numbers, which kind of leaves Evolve as the odd one out. Now, with this much money on the line, you can bet the finger-pointing started. And it started long before any of us or any of the customers knew something was wrong. Internal documents show there was this bitter fight raging behind the scenes. And this is where it just turns into a classic he said, she said disaster. Evolve's position was that Synapse messed up and didn't fully fund the customer accounts, and that's what created the shortfall. But Synapse fired right back, and they accused Evolve of causing the problem themselves by improperly charging millions in fees straight out of the customer accounts. So when Evolve turned around and demanded a $50 million reserve, Synapse just said, "You're only doing this as retaliation because we called you out." And if you look at the timeline, it reveals what might be the most baffling part of this whole story. As early as September 2023,
Both of these companies knew there was a gigantic problem with their books. They knew the numbers didn't match, but instead of hitting the brakes, freezing everything, and figuring it out, they just let a massive amount of money get moved from Evolve to other banks. This just compounded the chaos and made the whole situation nearly impossible to untangle.
But this wasn't just a failure of two companies. There were other major players involved, and the very regulators whose job it is to prevent this exact kind of chaos, well, they seem to have been completely oblivious. Get this. While this whole mess was brewing, one of Synapse's biggest, most important clients, a fintech company called Mercury, managed to move $3 billion of its customer funds to safety. They got out just in the nick of time.
I mean, the contrast is just stunning, isn't it? A multi-billion-dollar company gets out completely whole, not a penny lost. Meanwhile, people like Max, who were using the exact same system, were left with $17. It basically became a game of musical chairs, and it was all about who was left standing when the music stopped.
And this, right here, points to a massive regulatory failure. As fintech expert Jason McCullough put it, the Federal Reserve is the one that supervises Evolve Bank. They should have seen the red flags. It is literally their job to make sure a regulated bank has its house in order. But he says they were, and I'm quoting here, absolutely asleep at the wheel.
So where does all this leave the victims? The real people at the center of this? Well, months later, they are still fighting. They're still trying to get answers, and they're still desperately trying to get their life savings back.
And the outlook? It's pretty grim. In a recent meeting, the bankruptcy trustee, who's in charge of this whole mess, gave a really chilling update to the victims. She basically admitted that she's pessimistic that a real resolution is ever going to happen here.
Ultimately, this whole disaster just leaves us with a deeply, deeply unsettling question. When a system this complicated, this web of fintech apps and middlemen and banks and regulators fails so completely, who really pays the price? The companies? They can file for bankruptcy. The executives? They walk away. But the ones who truly pay the price? It's the regular people who just trusted the system to work in the first place.